Okay, hey Dr. Fox, it's Maggie, and I'm writing, or I guess talking to you about Chapter 10's journal response. And I thought this was really cool because it's focusing on bringing social studies to life through literature. And one of the first parts, like in the introduction, it talks about how the norm, the mundane of social studies is to use textbooks, which is what I grew up doing like mostly, and just remember a lot of reading from textbooks and just struggling with social studies in that way because it just wasn't interesting. And so now in this chapter, it talks a lot about how to implement literature into that to make it more exciting and interesting for students. So this was a really cool chapter to read and take note on. And so, okay, looking at this, so literature breathes life into a social studies unit and gives a bit of change to the mundane textbook of a social studies curriculum. And so teachers have been encouraged to expand the use of literature in their classrooms to enhance reading and writing. And so I guess with that, one of my questions is kind of like, are they doing away, or most teachers like doing away with teaching like a social studies like set time because they're implementing it with like their reading time. I know one of my teachers this next week when I'm talking about doing my social studies lesson, she wants me to implement it when they're talking about culture in their reading section. So like in their reading lesson, in her reading lesson book, she has like a big story she's reading to the class, and it's sorry, it's about like culture and different jobs and just your community. And so through that, she's implementing her science or her social studies lesson. And so that's when she wants me to do mine as well. So my question, like, I guess, is because we're trying to implement social studies into more literature style teaching, is that why a lot of them are doing away with having like a set time? Does that make sense? And then like my other question going off of that, is it just easier to teach social studies when it's based out of literature? And yeah, like when it's based out of reading and writing, is it easier to implement that into that rather than setting a set time? Those kind of correspond, go together, but a little different. Another thing that I took note of in our journal response was the thematic units. And so just like building around a theme and leading students beyond facts and dates to a deeper understanding of a concept, which I think is super cool because like even in high school, a lot of our like lessons and notes we took were just like main points and main dates. And because of that, I don't feel like I have a very good understanding of different things because it wasn't like the theme wasn't expanded upon, and so I don't have anything to like build my like, you know what I mean? Like it'd be easier to remember something if I had a lot of interesting facts to play off of it rather than just that main theme. Because it makes it hard for me to remember, like for example, the Declaration of Independence when I don't have a lot of or a lot of like different things that I could like connect that to help me remember different things about it. So the thematic units, they expose students to literary genres, they provide a broader vision and higher level exploration of a topic. Going off of that, just a few more things on that page. Okay, so they use fact and fiction both for enjoyment and learning, which I think is fun. It just continues to keep them engaged and also make it interesting, but still have truth and real things tied into that. And then some of the things that I wrote down, like teaching units and activities. Okay, so the picture books was the big thing that it helps them really, which like thinking back to like visual learners, like you're giving them a visual of like that time or that place, like in Europe. Like if you're reading a book about Europe and you've got pictures of it, they have that to tie to it, and it's also just keeps them engaged and it's fun to look at. And also if you're looking back at like a war or something, the visuals help them understand what that actually was like. Like if it's describing the war and they have a picture of something, it can kind of go hand in hand. So that's really cool. Let's see. It's an excellent means of conveying an understanding of both geography and history in the classroom. Picture books can transport students to places and give them the visual they need. And they just capture their interest. A book I wrote down was One World, One Day by Barbara Curley. It says it's a great overview of the world for students. Its colorful photographs provide global daily events which help the reader tolerate differences by understanding commonalities among nations. So that's an example to go along with the picture books. And then another form of literature was the biographies, and which I remember reading a lot of these. I guess I remember reading some of these when I was in elementary school. I like the diaries of like girls and boys going through like wars or just different phases of life, and so those were really cool to me. I didn't have pictures at the time. Like the ones I read were just chapter books, but I liked it because it was about a little girl or a little boy, and so I could relate in that sense, and it also was true, and so it was really interesting to read. So I can see where, like, just from personal experience, like, that was cool to me, and I was engaged with that. And so, since I was engaged, and was a student at the time, I think that other students could also be engaged and enjoy those. And so, whether they're a picture book or later on a chapter book for, like, middle schoolers or upper elementary, it says reading and learning the historical background surrounding a famous person and incorporating a related writing activity is an efficient way to use a literacy approach to social studies. And then the other thing I noted down was journal responses, just like we're doing in your class. Just getting them talking more about the topic, and they can take note, they can ask questions, just their thoughts, their feelings, the reactions, connections, and opinions while reading a book. And then that's for them to have, but they can also address that with other people. Their teacher, just like this, for example. And so even going off of that, like this alone, changing up the norm of me just like writing a journal response, but having to like watch myself record this video is a bit awkward, but I'm thinking more about it and just processing it aloud helps me even to look back and remember what I read or took note of and just think a little bit more about it. So, with that, I thank you for having us switch up the norm of just writing up a journal response for you and giving you this wonderful video of myself for Chapter 10's journal response. So, see you later.